Trucking around.
Mum's the word.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order, please. Everybody would, we'll do start the pledge of allegiance. Ms. Lucas, won't you lead us this evening?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, first action this evening will be the approval of the minutes of the April 1st, 2014 regular meeting. Ms. Smith made the motion. Mr. Baker, second. And all yes vote?
Yes.
Okay. We'll get to this next part. Jenny, if you'd like to get a copy of our agenda there, you're more than welcome to have one. For those of you who don't know, this is Jenny Woodall. She's used to work for Tri-Rivers, the bus system here, and she's migrated to Cabell County, her tribe.
I work in Cabell County, but I still live out here.
Well, I know that, but I'm saying you work for the bus system here now. Don't
Yes.
you work for the bus system in Cabell?
Now I'm with Tri-State Transit.
Yeah, I can always get those two names.
I know, Tri-River,
Got two
Tri-State.
tribes, but we're
Yeah.
glad to have you here.
Thank
She
you.
does live in West Hamlin. Her children attend Hamlin and PKA.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we don't have any, no one has signed in for any public comments this evening, so we'll go to the next section where we're going to have we're having our second public hearing on the school calendar for next year. Last week, Mr. Midkiff briefed us on the 3 calendars that have been developed and the vote that was by our employees. And at that point, it looked like calendar C had the most, well, no, it had the most votes. So we're now conducting the second required public hearing. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Midkiff.
Thank you, Mr. Priestley, and good evening, board members. It is correct, when Mr. Priestley was saying that last week we talked about the significant changes to the school calendar and the fact that the guidelines have changed, whereby requiring us to have to look at making up all lost instruction that we would incur next year as a result of inclement weather or water crisis, whatever may happen. You know, we have to have a plan to make up for those days of lost instruction. We walked through some of the other changes, part of which is a requirement that we have a policy. The board adopt a policy that explains and describes what this will look like next year if the need arises to make up for lost instruction. And I actually have for you this evening a sample policy that I want you to take a look at that Grant County's working on through Bowles-Rice. Joe Panetta, the State Department sent this information out earlier this week for us to consider.
Is there a time frame for us approving a policy, Jeff?
July 1st is our time.
And this was sent out with the approval of Bowles-Rice
Yes.
for us, for all counties to be able to look at.
And again, this is only a draft.
We have to do it by July the 1st.
And in his communication, it kind of talked about not really painting ourselves in a corner when it comes to what the language will look like with the policy. So when you look at this policy, you'll see it's very general in nature, but it talks about the board being able to make adjustments to the calendar as we progress through the school year. So let's say this next year in January, we were out 4 or 5 days for snow. At the first board meeting in February, we could have a conversation and discuss how we're going to make those days up. The board has the option of using the non-instructional days that are already built into the calendar, like the OS days and the continuing ed days and the preparation days. The board also has at its option the ability to use the out-of-calendar days. if you wanted to protect those non-instructional days that's built in. So based on what I've read in this policy, and I really haven't had time to really dig into this, it appears that the board from month to month can make those decisions as to what days you will utilize to make up for your lost instruction. And part of this policy has to include those times when you have early dismissals or late arrivals. It's all inclusive. And then along with this policy, I think it's going to be important that we have some guidelines, and we talked about this last week as well, so that our employees, our parents know and understand that it's possible, based upon the number of days that we would be out next year, that we may have to use spring break or those days in June after the last day for teachers as possible instructional days.
Jeff, last week when you were talking to us, it's my recollection that we made up, there were certain days that we were required to make up the first, and then after that, after the ninth day, the next day would be the spring break, not having time to.
Right,
decide.
and this is very general.
Same thing or not?
Right, this doesn't go into that kind of detail, but that's a question, I think we need to discuss. We need to talk through this is, are we going to set in stone that those first 6 OS days are going to be days that we're going to use to make up for lost instruction? So, if we have 6 snow days, then the board would say, okay, the first 6 days we're out, those 6 OS days are going to be used to make up for those days.
There's nothing in code that requires that you're aware of?
No, I can't find any.
That was part of the autonomy that they were giving back to the local boards through this new calendar.
Actually, that's the way I was kind of working this, because I'd seen what Cabell and a couple other counties had put in place. Now, it's just a draft, something that they were going to share with their employees and their parents. And I'm not sure now, after getting this communication from Joe Panetta, that maybe that's the right thing to do or not. That you don't want to create a situation whereby you're painting yourself in a corner and saying, we're locked into this. There may be other options depending on what's going on at the time that the board may want to consider. And may say, we don't want to use those OS days first.
And I see that, I noted that one, which is such recommendation to meet the first meeting of each month for recovery. So at the point that you, or we as a system, weren't able to meet the 180, then we'd have to, according to this, then at that month have to decide, okay, what are we going to do to make up the first days or ever how many there are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I read this right, even though you have, 9 days built in that you can take,
Right.
the first day of instructional time that you lose, as I read this, even if you have OS days, 9 of those are allocated to fill that, we still have to look at that the first day of the following month and say, we lost a day in November due to a water loss at this school or in the county. So December, whatever, we have to look and say, okay, we're going to use one of those 9 days we have set aside. This is the day we're going to use. You don't get to wait until you've used those 9 and then say, is it going to be spring break or add on to the end of the year?
Right.
I think this says when you lose one instructional day, you got to immediately address it the first meeting next month.
And that was never explained before. This is the first time that I've seen this explanation.
And if one school loses a day, but the rest don't, that one school can lose an OS day and not the other school.
Well, we're not sure what that's going to look like, but that's how I see it. That's not really been explained in detail.
Yeah.
So,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah, with transportation.
Well, that, I'm just thinking
But again, a broad general policy, that really doesn't narrow you down to any particular set of dates or days that we would use to make up for lost instruction.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask a question about the first section general, and I know you're looking at this fairly new as well, but let's say we have a day where school starts, we dismiss 2 hours early because of weather. As I'm reading this, this says in that event, an early dismissal or a late start, you have to allocate a part of one of these other days to make up for that. Didn't you tell us that we were going to have so many extra instructional minutes from
Right.
each school, with Ranger having the least on a daily basis?
That's
Would we,
correct.
would we be allowed to use some of those banked minutes? Like say you dismiss Ranger for a half a day due to water or something, no electric. Couldn't you make those up with those banked minutes?
Yes,
But you can't
That's
make up
true.
a missed day.
not an entire day.
If you have a missed day, you have to go to one of your allocated days or find a day to start school, which is another question that maybe we'll address later.
Is this what Rowdy's discussing, is that alluded to anywhere in here?
No, I don't think it actually talks about accrued instructional time. And again, this policy, this is something that Joe just sent to us for us to look at and examine. You know, there are several requirements of different areas that are to be included in the policy that is approved or developed that I'm not sure are all included in here. I haven't really had time to sit down and walk through this.
Well, it looks to me like they're taking a very, like you said, they're taking a very complicated subject. They're leaving it as general as possible to give you as many options as possible.
I wonder, what does that say? Under professional development, it just refers to professional employees.
Right.
I mean, when servers, they're required to have continued, whatever they refer to it now, continued ed or something. I wonder why they just terminology like this.
And everyone is seeing this right now across the state for the first time, so I'm sure there's going to be
Be a lot of-
lots of revisions to this. But I've always said from the get-go that, you know, more than likely, we would end up eventually seeing a policy from the state that counties would adopt as their own, and I think that's where this is going.
And we aren't aware of any county that is, well, if they have, they're just now doing that, no one's adopted anything yet, have they?
Right, no one has. So that's something for you to look at and be thinking about. The only concerns that I've heard about the calendar has come from teachers who are concerned about their first pay date. With the August 18th calendar, employees will not be paid until, won't get their first paycheck until September 15th. And that was communicated at the time that the calendars were sent out to employees to make sure that they knew that that was a possibility if they selected that calendar C as their preferred calendar. And the issue, the problem is the fact that, you know, pay period's based on 10 days. There's 10 days in pay period. And if you look at this calendar that brings our employees back on the 18th, 10 days is going to be August the 29th. Well, we have, according to the finance office, if we were to pay our employees on this day, we would be paying them ahead for days that we don't even know if they're going to be working on those days or not. And by the 27th, if we were going to pay our employees on the 29th, by the 27th, for those who get direct deposit, that information would have to go out electronically to the banks on that date. So when you look at it, you're only talking about 7 days maximum that the employees would be working before we'd be paying them. So we're paying them ahead of time, you know, not knowing whether or not they're actually going to work those days or not. So
Someone in
the issue.
theory could be, well, I guess you'd have your personal leave days to start the year off. I start to say maybe they were out days, but they just now started then, so they wouldn't be out.
Right, so there's not enough time to turn it around.
And we don't, of course, Bertie's not here tonight, we don't know for sure, I don't know, when, as far as state aid, when that's received, if the monies are available,
Right.
maybe there's sufficient funds to pay personnel.
I was hoping Bertie would be here this evening so she could talk about this topic. I'm just going on what my brief conversation I'd had with her, you know, a couple of weeks ago.
But even knowing that, based on the chart you gave us last time, the teachers, well, the people that are affected were overwhelmingly in favor of calendar C.
Right.
There was only, what, a small, well, one group, was it mechanics? Someone. that-
Transportation.
Yeah, that preferred another calendar, but almost excluding that group of people, everyone else pretty much was in favor of calendar C.
But what you're telling us is when these 3 calendars were submitted or sent to the schools, they were told at that time if they chose C, that their pay would not be until September 15th.
That's correct. Yeah, so they knew before they voted what the outcome.
You sent it out to the principals.
Yes, to communicate
share,
with
to
employees.
communicate with the staff.
Principals and directors.
I don't know if any of you have had any interaction with members of the public regarding the calendars, but I've had a lot of questions from people because I'm at soccer games and softball games and all these things. And people have been getting the telephone calls announcing this and asking me what it's about. And when I've explained that really has to do with start date and potential end date, everyone, and at least 10 to 12 people that I've talked to, they've all loved the fact that starting later in August rather than starting earlier as we have been. So I don't know how much I don't know, are you here to talk about the calendar tonight? If not, we've had, what, 0 comments from the public on the calendar?
No, we had one commenter.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, apologize. But, you know, it seems that the people that know what it's about prefer the calendar C as well, and as a parent, I certainly do.
Now, when they talk, do you communicate to them, now, you realize that if things were really bad, you might lose spring break?
I've told them that, and they understand that, you know, because of the oddness of this year and the numbers of days missed, that they could lose spring break and potentially have to go to school till the end of June. I can't tell you that people like potentially having to go to school that late for all the reasons we talked about last time, but, you know, it is still much preferable to the other options, which, I'll be honest, I didn't tell them every difference in calendar A, B, and C, because I don't know every difference in A, B, and C, but the main differences are start date. You know, no matter which calendar you choose, you're gonna get 180 days of education, of instruction. So it's whether you do it from August 18 till June 10, or you start August, 7, 8? So that's the big issues that people looked at, and that's what I explained to them, and they understand.
Well, I think the key piece is just clearly communicating so that all stakeholders know and understand that it's possible, you know, that we would have to use days over spring break to make up for lost instruction, or potentially go into the month of June, through June the 30th.
I think we talked about that last time and agreed that if calendar C is adopted and approved, that we should send a copy of calendar C home with the kids at the end of the year. We should send another the very first day of school, and those calendars should have a note that says, don't block out spring break, don't necessarily block out Christmas break, because these are the first days to go in the event of more than 9 missed days for any reason.
In big font.
Big font.
And then-
I mean,
And that's why I'm
supersized font, bold.
That's why I'm here. I want to know which way it's leaning, because, before I make plans for the summer.
Right.
If we're gonna start at the beginning of August, or if we're gonna start, it makes a big difference.
Well,
That's why I came to listen.
We aren't going to vote tonight.
Right.
But in all likelihood, I mean, the employees have overwhelmingly voted for that calendar you see there.
And that's why I just wanted, I came to get a feel,
Well, I
It's in
think,
your packet.
get a temperature check.
It's in your packet labeled as calendar
I
C.
s-
Steve,
John,
the story I did in the paper today will be online Thursday with the calendar
Right.
embedded into it, which I will post on Facebook, which gets 4,000 friends, so it will percolate out there as well. I
Yeah,
took the
there's-
liberty of putting C in there, I
I
thought.
saw today's paper. Well, I mean, we can't say for certain, but I think there's all likelihood C is probably going to be the one that gets chosen. But we just want to make sure that everyone knows when they go on vacation and all, you know, they're caught up in vacation time. Well, I want to make plans for next year, that they think of hit that in the back of their mind. Now, the other issue that's kind of a side note here is on going back to the pay thing again. I just want to, once again, I'm still interested in investigating the possibility of 24 pays in a year and spreading that out. And it wouldn't help this first year because, you know, there's still going to be that gap. But after the initial year, if we paid 24 times 12 months around everybody, it would eliminate the concern that some of the employees had there. And I would be hopeful that it would also eliminate that May and June, is that when the extra insurance is taken out? April, May, that it would eliminate that and you could spread that out too. I would be, you know, that at some point we could look and see, as Gandy said, it was, you know, that we could, you know, permit to do that. I mean, it may have some wrinkles in it, but it just looks to me like if we were able to do that and we could help everybody budget their monies a little bit, at the same time resolve that issue. And this, the thing is, even before we got into the calendar, I've heard many complaints about this April and May double dip your, you know, having to take your insurance out twice. And I understand that they have to, but it would seem like to kill two birds with one stone. So, okay, any other comments about the calendar? Jeff, any more you want to share with us? Our two members of the audience, do you have any questions or any comments?
I have one question, just out of curiosity. Has the board entertained the year-round version of the calendar at all?
Well, these calendars are developed, we give the employees the opportunity to develop calendars. And Mr. Midkiff is over that. I don't know that anyone has ever proposed such a calendar. And typically what we do is we see what calendars have been submitted, and I don't know if there were 3 that we've seen. I don't know if there are others or not. Jeff can respond.
There were actually 6 calendars, but not what they're calling a balanced calendar or a year-round calendar. There was not a proposal for such a calendar.
I was under the impression a couple of years ago that we might be entertaining that. That's why I asked.
Statewide or in this county?
In this county.
KK proposed it
Oh, okay.
briefly when he was president.
I remember that.
And that's not to say, I mean, that's why they're, like as Luke said, the autonomy of each county to choose the way that they best want to address that. But at this point, you know, we're not really bound by the employees, you know, how they feel. But certainly we take that into highly, you know, we want to consider that a lot because we want to do what we can for everybody, keep everybody happy as much as we can. Anything else from anyone about the calendar? Okay, and we're going to try to adopt this when?
Next
week? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mickey.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. All righty.